You're listening to theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
And welcome to the final part of the Cape Wrath Trail, where Lee and I travel on foot from Ullapool to Cape Wrath, the most northwesterly point in Scotland. Join us as we make our way gently along the route suggested in the Cicerone Guide, north to the Cape, over a period of 7 days in early May 2008.
In fact, I see Lee has just emerged from his acto. I'm going to ask him if he's got any thoughts on the trip. Lee, you're going on to the TGO, so you've sort of honed the contents of your rucksack right down to the bare minimum for this trip, as well as the TGO. Any other thoughts on sort of lightweight gear? Anything you could have ditched or wish you'd brought?
No, I don't think there's anything I wish I'd have brought, to be honest. Possibly a spare t-shirt, because this Burghouse with the silver threads in it to keep the nifs away. It's worked quite well, but it would have been nice just to have fresh, when in the hotel, to have had a clean one on.
We didn't expect the weather to be as good as this, though, did we? I mean, I could have done with a t-shirt as well.
No, that's right. I suppose my Crocs I could have done without, but they're one of my luxuries, and they've proved to be very useful.
Yeah, well, certainly I've noticed that when you kicked your Terex off and you're wandering around in the Crocs, I mean, they're incredibly light, but they're very stiff, aren't they? They're just an awkward thing to pack.
Yeah, it's a little bit awkward, but I've started to put in me spare socks and that inside them to reduce the volume of my gear a little bit. But yeah, on the whole, I think it's well worth it. But everything I'm very pleased with, to be honest. My acto, as usual, has been very comfortable and very weatherproof. Rucksack, very incredibly comfortable.
Just not as much room as my tent.
Not as much room as yours. Not as much room as your tent now, Bob. But there you go. Sleeping bag is a Marmot Helium. Yes, that's at about 850. I think that's been incredibly comfortable and warm. But then again, we've not had any cold nights yet.
You've been using gas, haven't you? How much gas have you used? Best part of a week now?
I started off with the small 100 cartridge and the 250 cartridge. I used the 100 and left that at the hotel in the bin, and I'm now on the 250. So
got plenty left then.
Plenty left, yeah, plenty.
Yeah. So what did you think about those three guys we met yesterday who were just starting off with traditional gear?
Reminded of myself probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I didn't envy them, to be honest.
No, they looked tired, didn't they, already?
Yeah, I think later in the trip they possibly going to struggle because it was quite tough. Yeah. And I just really felt pleased that I've managed to get my pack down a lot smaller. Well,
the pair of us, I think we just strolled off really, but they as I say, no detriment to them obviously, but it just makes you realise that over the last few years we've certainly come on more, and a trip like this would benefit from being as light as possible.
Oh, without doubt, yeah, we've been able to move more comfortable and quite fast at times when we wanted to do it. Without doubt, I think any trip, if you can keep the weight down, it's more enjoyable.
But this one in particular, because the lack of shops, apart from the two shops we saw yesterday, we haven't seen any shops since Ullapool. No,
none at all. No, and in the book there it says that there's very little in the way of provisions, you can pick up on the way.
Well, Sandwood Bay's been no letdown at all. It's been absolutely glorious, and obviously the weather's on our side, and it's fantastic today. And I think, as you said in the book, if there was a road or a car park near here, it'd be a nice cream van, wouldn't there?
Oh, that's right. There'd be crowds of people here. I'm sure there would, but thank God there's not.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So, what time is it now? It's almost 12 o'clock. What are we going to do? Pack up and head up the coast and see if we can hear the bombs?
Yeah, head up, pack up, head to the lighthouse, and to the end of the journey.
And then what's the plan then? Should we come back after that, or are we going to move round towards Durness?
I think we're going to move round to Durness, and hope to get the ferry across the estuary and catch the bush tomorrow. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's keep our fingers crossed the weather holds, and I'll obviously come back and fill you in as we get towards Cape Wrath. Looking forward to it.
Yes, so am I, immensely.
We're an hour and a half from the beach now, heading towards Cape Wrath. An unbelievable day. It feels like the height of summer. So much so we just got to the first large loch, which I won't try and pronounce, but it looks like Gahuda Rudith, but I probably got that completely wrong. We passed the bothy, which is on the way. Temperatures must be in the 70s, mid 70s. I've just dunked my hat in the water and stood in the water to try and cool down a bit. Lee's done the same. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's ridiculous this time of year, isn't it?
It's a fantastic, warm, very warm day, and which is a pleasure really, because it'd been a horrible terrain in wet, cold weather, wouldn't it? So.
Yeah, it's sort of heathery. It's low heather and fairly marshy. In these conditions, in this weather conditions, it's not too bad. You just got to keep lifting your knee very high and just occasional zigzagging. But we're just sort of following a natural path, trying to keep high, not too close to the coast, where the gullies are obviously fairly deep. It just means dropping down and climbing up all the time. For an hour and a half to here, I reckon another couple of hours and we'll be there quite easily. I think that was possibly the worst climbing we've got to do. The rest of it now is just traversing round the side of some of these hills. Fair amount of bird life, clear blue sky again, just a few clouds. As I say, the temperature must be the mid 70s, very, very warm indeed, and both of us are working very hard in these conditions. Not that we're complaining, but it's not what we were expecting at all, particularly as normally at the end of this week when the TGO challenge starts, there's usually, I've never been on one without a frost, have you?
No, not so far. I came up last late September and it was very cold, so in comparison with this is hard as summer.
Yeah. Well, we spoke to, there was a couple of people on the beach this morning as we came through, a bird watcher and a couple of other hikers by the looks of it, and the bird watching chap was saying that this is unusual weather, so don't take this as being the norm. Like most people, it's very unusual weather patterns at the moment, but makes for a nice day. I'm going to get a bit of a tan. The only thing I didn't pack was any suntan lotion, did you?
No, I hadn't dreamed we'd need suntan lotion, but it is on days like this and terrain like this that the lightweight footwear really comes.
Oh, doesn't it just?
Yeah,
just
comes out top.
You can just get to a river, wade through and appreciate the coolness of it all rather than changing. The only thing I think we've both got to watch is the back of our necks with the sun beaming down. So I'll no doubt switch back on as we get towards our final destination. And as I say, I think, what time is it now? 2:30. Well, the military activity finishes apparently at 3 o'clock, so we're well out of danger area. And then we'll probably start heading down the road towards the ferry and either camp at the bothy tonight, or which is on the northeast coast of Cape Wrath, or get as far as we can towards the ferry to make sure we catch the ferry tomorrow. But beautiful, beautiful day, and I think really so far we've been incredibly lucky. The majority of the walking has actually been pretty pleasant weather. We just had those first few days when it was pretty wet, and we soon cheered up when the weather changed.
As you just said, Bob, we've been just very lucky. You'd get food days like this in Scotland, and we've had several, so we've been very lucky.
Yeah, very lucky indeed. Right, let's move on then. Well, we're about 2/3 of the way to the Cape now. We can just see the rocks and the roadway going off to the distance. It's taken us best part of 4 hours to get this way. I mean, the total distance is approximately about 11 or 12 kilometres, which would normally take Lee and I probably just over 2 hours to walk on normal terrain. But I think this has got to be the hardest terrain of the whole trip.
Yes, definitely, without doubt, been the hardest. It's a bit boggy, isn't it? And the heather's not too high, but just, ankle deep. That's been tough going.
Yeah, very tough going. I mean, we were just saying that certainly people who walk without poles would be foolhardy. A couple of times we've come across boggy areas which you wouldn't give a second thought to, but when you put the pole in, it goes virtually all the way down. So that could scupper you even on a glorious day like this. And the other thing is, walking with the poles, you just need it for stability, because the ground underfoot is hard going. I can't imagine. Well, let's put it this way: you'd have to be pretty stoic to start off from the Cape with a full load, full of provisions for a few days to head to Sandwood Bay, don't you think?
Oh, definitely, yeah. That,
Test your resolve, wouldn't it?
It certainly would, yeah. I wouldn't even attempt backpacking without poles, and I'm using the Pacer poles, which I really like the comfort they give you, and the stability and an awful lot of safety.
But I think doing this with a full pack, if anybody does intend to do it, just take it from us that the first section is, I think, probably the hardest, and anything else after that, hopefully, will be easier for you.
Without doubt, yeah. And you could soon parcel your provisions on to Kylescu or Inchdamp. I don't think that would be a problem, so that's worth bearing in mind.
Anyway, another 3-4k to go, I guess.
Yep.
And then we'll switch back on again. But I just thought I'd share that piece of information with you, because I think if you were starting from the Cape, you need to know that it's not as bad as this all the way. You ready then?
Aye.
Well, after much cursing and swearing, a good 4.5 hours, we finally hit the metalled road, which is taking us to the lighthouse. So we're hoping that we're going to see it around the next bend, and this is fortunate timing for turning the recorder on. I really must advise people again that this first section, if you're going south, is very disheartening, or could be very disheartening. Just be prepared for it. It was unbelievably boggy in places, even on a glorious day like today, and took a lot of effort to get across, and it just seemed to go on forever, didn't it?
Yeah, it seemed never ending. You stumbling a little bit, and boggy sections, and you just couldn't get a good stride anywhere at all, could you, from the beginning of the walk this morning?
No, and certainly looking at the route as we've travelled it, I can't see a better one than we took. We sort of took bearings, taking as much of the sort of high ground and traversing the slopes as best we can. Anyway, I don't want to make too much of it, because I don't want to let that potentially spoil anybody's walk. We've got past it. It's taking us longer than anticipated. Just one of those things. But the weather's made up for it. And hopefully, yes,
we can do it.
As we just turn the corner here, at last we see the lighthouse. And we were just discussing, I hope it's got a vending machine or something, because a cold can of beer or Coke would go down well now, wouldn't it?
Oh, I couldn't think anything better at this moment in time, but I don't think we're going to be that lucky, Bob.
No. Well, congratulations, Lee. Thank you very much indeed for your company over the last 6 days of hell and high water.
And yourself, Bob, yeah, and yourself. It's really made it very enjoyable.
I think, as we've probably explained, we've been lucky with the weather. It's been changeable, but the only thing it hasn't really been is bitter cold. We've been very, very lucky with the weather the time of year, and of course we haven't seen, or we've just had the occasional one, but haven't had any trouble from the dreaded midge.
No, we've been very lucky seeing the odd food, but we've had no problems with midges, just no problems with anything really, Bob, apart from high mileage and boggy terrain.
Yeah, indeed. So I'll switch back on in a second when we've caught our breath and we're resting out of the wind against one of the many walls around the lighthouse. It looks like it's potentially manned, actually. There's some chimneys there and various roofs, so whether there's somebody there or not, I'm not too sure. Maybe they've got a cold one in the fridge, mate.
Oh, well, you never know. Yeah, you never know.
We can live in hope, can't we?
Live in hope. It is a lot of hope.
What time is it now? So it's 5 o'clock now. I'm sure we'll have half an hour's rest here, gather our thoughts, and then we've got to turn around and head back down the road, but thankfully we can get some pace on, and I think we'll do our best to get down to the ferry point tonight if we can. There's been no evidence of military activity, haven't heard anything, just seen a few military ships off the coast. I haven't heard anything at all, so thankfully a safe ending to a quiet day. So I'll speak to you shortly.
And in the Cicerone Guide North to the Cape, Dennis Brooke and Phil Hinchcliffe have this to say. Reluctantly departing from this idyllic scene at Sandwood Bay, Your way ever northwards is rough due to the absence of paths, but it is not difficult. There are several long, narrow, steep-sided clefts known as geodes, formed by erosion in the coastal cliffs. The geodes pose no real problem other than the possibility of having to go a few hundred meters inland to avoid the worst of the topographical drops and rises. If the westerlies bring rain during your journey, and they probably will, the showers will strike horizontally straight off the Atlantic coast, almost flavoured with salt. 3 or 4 kilometres from Cape Wrath, you cross the peat-dark rolling moor known as the Parf, a Gaelic corruption of the Old Norse name for Cape Wrath, half or turning point. The cape marks the angle where the Viking ships altered course, veering south to enter the Minch, on the way to the west coast of Scotland and the Hebrides. Having crossed the moor and joined the track, you will soon arrive at the most northwesterly point of the British Isles, where, in the summer months, the sun hardly sets. At midnight it is possible to read even a newspaper at these latitudes. Cape Wrath is not the most northerly point of the mainland of Britain. That distinction goes to Dunnet Head, and not John O'Groats, as is popularly supposed. The Cape is, however, the most northerly point unreachable by motor transport, other than the minibus which runs from the Kyle of Durness to the Cape during the summer months. Long may this be the case, for its very remoteness is the essence of its charm. As you come to the actual moment where you stand near the lighthouse, savouring a well-earned sense of pride, you will feel as if you have reached the ends of the earth. There may be others present, having come by the easy way of ferry and minibus, but you will have done it the walker's way, and the sense of achievement will be enormous. When the euphoria dies down, take a look around you and inspect the far horizons. Standing on Cape Wrath, you are 122 metres above the waves. Nearby, Black Cliff is a sheer 260 metres from the swirling Atlantic. North, there's naught between you and the 2,700 kilometres distance North Pole, except perhaps the odd ship working its way around the coast, following the self-same routes as the Viking longships, all those hundreds of years ago. To the east is Dunnet Head, some 90 kilometres away, beyond Thurso. A little to the north of Dunnet Head, you can just detect the cliffs of Hoy in the Orkneys, some 95 kilometres away at a height of 348 metres. In exceptional weather conditions, the low cliffs of North Rona rise mirage-like some 72 kilometres away. A mirage indeed, as the cliffs are only 100 metres high. 80 kilometres southwest, as if pencilled on the horizon, one sees the low hills of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides. Much lower, in the sea below the Cape, are 2 low mounds. These rocks, over which the Atlantic swells in never-ending white flumes, are Ambodach and Acalich, the old man and the old woman. Should the weather be venting its wrath on this aptly named cape, you will see none of these magical sights. But we have no doubt that you will return and return yet again to this bewitching place, just like those who fall under the spell of the Himalayan mountains in Nepal. At the tip of the cape, the automatic lighthouse stands 4 square against the elements. Built in 1827, the light can be seen for 40 kilometres and more. The adjacent buildings, long disused and now falling derelict, were once the homes of customs officers. The nearest habitation is at the bottom of the 11-kilometre track to the Kyle of Durness, across which a small foot passenger ferry plies its trade from the opposite jetty. In Durness, 3 kilometres northeast, there are several hotels, many B&Bs, a youth hostel, a garage, bank, shops, and a tourist information centre. Well, you've done it. Your long adventure is at an end. You may have suffered deprivations. You may have been soaked through. you will certainly have got wet feet on more than one occasion. Exceptionally, you may have enjoyed good weather, at least some of the time. Some excellent accommodation, food and drink. You may be feeling footsore and weary. You will certainly be a lot fitter than when you left Fort William all those days ago. Above all, we hope you will be elated and exhilarated, having achieved what you set out to do. Congratulations, you've made it north to the Cape.
Well, Wednesday morning starts remarkably, once again, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The water is like a mill pond, there isn't a cloud in the sky, and the sunburn reminds us it has been fairly warm this last couple of days. We didn't switch on again at Cape Wrath because by the time we got there and just had a quick look around, there's nothing really there at all, apart from obviously the lighthouse and a few sort of utility buildings. We started down the road because we wanted, if we could, to try and get across the estuary before the end of the day. Now, for future reference for people, it is a 10-mile walk, and we managed to clock it in about 3.5 hours last night. So we got down to the let's say the ferry port. I suppose it's just a little jetty at about 9:30 last night, just as somebody was pulling away in a van. Driving past us, which I guess is somebody looking after some dogs that we heard at the Cape Wrath lighthouse. He didn't stop, he just nodded, so we assumed that either he was coming back or that there would be somebody else here that we could seek information from. And we eventually got down here, not a soul in sight. No telephone numbers, no assistance, whatever. So if you're coming this way, make sure you understand how things work around here, which would appear to be fairly sporadically. It's, what is it now, 9 o'clock. We've been awake since 7. We managed to find a nice little spot, actually, very luckily, 100 yards or so from the jetty, behind a property which looks like it's, I wouldn't say abandoned, but hardly used, just on a hillside. And half an hour ago, we just suddenly noticed that a little boat was coming our way from the other side, containing what we now know to be workmen going on to doing some repairs on the road. And we got up and we packed as fast as we could. We weren't too far behind. The tent was almost down. Lee ran down to him and said, "Can you just hold on for 2 minutes?" And the guy just didn't want to know. He just dropped the other guys off, turned around and cleared off. He said, "I'll be back at 11." So you can imagine that's left us rather frustrated. Strangely enough, we had spoken to a couple of people that we met coming down from Cape Wrath as we were obviously on the way up, that said something about the ferryman is a law to himself and not very communicative. And that goes to prove the point that the whole trip has just been spoiled by one person, because obviously by the time he gets over here at 11ish, and we get to the other side, we've still got to walk up to Durness, and then I think our bus leaves at 3, so it doesn't leave us very long to do what we need to do. And of course, one has to consider that it could have been a medical situation that somebody needed to urgently get across, and the guy just chose to ignore Lee's frantic pleas. So not an unpleasant morning to be left stranded for another couple of hours. But a little bit frustrating because there's nothing else that we can do. We're now packed because everything got packed in a bit of a rush. We were pretty well ready to go, but we just couldn't get down to the jetty in time. But a pleasant morning, but frustrating all the same, don't you think, Lee?
Yeah, a little bit frustrating considering we could, been in Durness for breakfast. But there you go. We've heard he's a law unto himself, and I suppose we just got to wait in this lovely sunshine at this lovely bay, I suppose.
Oh, well, there's worse places to be in this world, I'm sure, at this particular moment in time. But anyway, that probably well brings the story to a close. It'll just be a trip to Durness now, and then a bus ride down to Inverness, and we then go our separate ways for Lee to start the TGO and me to catch the plane back home, back to normality, away from this spectacular scenery and, well, wonderful weather. So I shall leave you now and just make the most of this next couple of hours and just soak up the sunshine. Thanks for listening.
The last comment we made that morning does require some explanation. The ferryman did indeed return when he said using the correct boat, with a full complement of passengers and day trippers for the Cape. The initial boat we saw him using wasn't actually licensed for passengers such as us. And in these days of health and safety, he wasn't prepared to breach agreements, which was fair enough. The few hours we waited in beautiful weather did in fact help sharpen our appetite and thirst, which was suitably quenched when we got to Durness, before returning to Inverness on the local bus service later that day. Lee and I were both grateful the weather was so perfect those last few days, as it made a magical trip through a very unique part of our country even more special. If you're up for a long-distance hike like this, then the full trip from Fort William to Cape Wrath will provide you with ample reward, lots of adventure and exquisite beauty. It certainly did for us. Thanks for joining us on the final part of this trip as we reached our goal, the remote and craggy Cape Wrath Lighthouse. We hope you've enjoyed walking with us and can thoroughly recommend the route suggested in the Cicerone Guide north to the Cape. Tough going at times, but some of the most glorious scenery you'll ever see in the UK. There are many other walking experiences on the Outdoors station, such as the TGO Challenge and many personal trips, so do visit our website to find out more. So why not try it yourself, north to the Cape, and it's available from cicerone.co.uk.
This independent programme has been brought to you by the Outdoors Station, the exciting new way to see and hear free information about the outdoors world. If you're a blogger, or if you have a website, you can now incorporate any of these podcasts directly to your site, completely free. Visit our website, theoutdoorstation.co.uk, for more information.